I put a prison style countdown on the right there to make it more obvious that it's not a, I don't know, whatever. Is mic still working? I don't know. I'm running a JavaScript engine, whatever. I gotta meet or I'm gonna meet the 2009 standard first because it's only 200 pages. Then I'll do the 2024 standard because it's 800 pages. So I'm gonna get the other standard done first, and the next one, I'm gonna have Siri read one of the standards, or whatever. I still gotta turn the computer on. I don't know. I want to try to get something done today, so I'm not gonna talk all the time. But as I'm going through the code, it looks like most of the places where I need to replace for with the new define, it's grouped up in a couple files, so it's not as difficult as I thought it would be. It's a lot easier, and it's not as, I don't know. I thought it was gonna be really tedious to get through all this, but it's not that much work. The code's not as bad as I thought it was. So I'm gonna see how far I can get today. I got a couple files done. There's still a lot left to go, whatever. So I'm just gonna start whatever. I don't know, yeah.
The MV of hex digit, C or of hex digit, C is 12, the MV of hex digit, D or of hex digit, D is 13, the MV of hex digit, E or of hex digit, E is 14, the MV of hex digit, F or of hex digit, F is 15, the MV of hex integer literal. 0x hex digit is the MV of hex digit, the MV of hex integer literal. 0x hex digit is the MV of hex digit. The MV of hex integer literal. Hex integer literal hex digit is the MV of hex integer literal times 16 plus the MV of hex digit. Once the exact MV for a numeric literal has been determined, it is then rounded to a value of the number type. If the MV is 0, then the rounded value is plus 0. Otherwise, the rounded value must be the number value for the MV, as specified in 8.5. Unless the literal is a decimal literal and the literal has more than 20 significant digits. In which case the number value may be either the number value for the MV of a literal produced by replacing each significant digit after the 20th with a 0 digit, or the number value for the MV of a literal produced by replacing each significant digit after the 20th with a 0 digit and then incrementing the literal at the 20th significant digit position. A digit is significant if it is not part of an exponent part and it is not 0, or there is a nonce-zero digit to its left and there is a nonce-zero digit not in the exponent part to its right. A conforming implementation when processing strict mode code. C1011 must not extend the syntax of numeric literal to include octal integer literal as described in B1.1, 8.4 string literals. A string literal is 0 or more characters enclosed in single or double quotes. Each character may be represented by an escape sequence. All characters may appear literally in a string literal except for the closing quote character, backslash, carriage return, line separator, paragraph separator, and line feed. Any character may appear in the form of an escape sequence. Syntax: string literal, double string character sopt, single string character sopt, double string characters, double string character, double string character sopt, single string characters, single string character, single string character sopt, double string character, source character but not double quote or backslash or line terminator escape sequence, line continuation, single string character, source character but not single quote or backslash or line terminator escape sequence, line continuation, line terminator sequence. 2. ECMA International 2009. Escape sequence. Character escape sequence. Look ahead decimal digit. Hex escape sequence. Unicode escape sequence. Character escape sequence. Single escape character. Non-escape character. Single escape character. 1 of BFNRTV, non-escape character, source character but not escape character or line terminator, escape character, single escape character, decimal digit, XU, hex escape sequence, X hex digit, Unicode escape sequence, U hex digit, hex digit. The definitions of the non-terminal hex digit is given in 7.6. Source character is defined in clause 6. Semantics. A string literal stands for a value of the string type. The string value, SV, of the literal is described in terms of character values, CV, contributed by the various parts of the string literal. As part of this process, some characters within the string literal are interpreted as having a mathematical value, MV, as described below or in 7, 8, 3. The SV of string literal is the empty character sequence. The SV of string literal is the empty character sequence. The SV of string literal, double string characters is the SV of double string characters. The SV of string literal, single string characters is the SV of single string characters. The SV of double string characters, double string character is a sequence of one character. The CV of double string character. The SV of double string characters, double string characters is a sequence of the CV of double string character followed by all the characters in the SV of double string characters in order. The SV of single string characters. Single string character is a sequence of one character. The CV of single string character. The SV of single string characters. Single string characters is a sequence of the CV of single string character followed by all the characters in the SV of single string characters in order. The SV of line continuation, line terminator sequences the empty character sequence. The CV of double string character, source character but not double quote or backslash or line terminator is the source character itself. The CV of double string character, escape sequence is the CV of the escape sequence. The CV of single string character, source character but not single quote or backslash or line terminator is the source character itself. The CV of single string character, escape sequence is the CV of the escape sequence. The CV of escape sequence, character escape sequence is the CV of the character escape sequence. ECMA International 2009-23, the CV of escape sequence. 0. Look ahead decimal digit is a null character Unicode value 0000. The CV of escape sequence. Hex escape sequence is the CV of the hex escape sequence. The CV of escape sequence. Unicode escape sequence is the CV of the Unicode escape sequence. The CV of character escape sequence. Single escape character is the character whose code unit value is determined by the single escape character according to Table 4. Table 4. String single character escape sequences. Escape sequence BTNVF. Code unit value U0008, U0009, U000 U000B, U000C, U000D, U0022, U0027, U005C. Name symbol, backspace, BS. Horizontal tab, HT, line feed, new line, LF. Vertical tab, VT, form feed, FF. Carriage return CR double quote C, angle quote backslash, comma the CV of character escape sequence. Non-escape character. The CV of non-escape character. Source character but not escape character or line terminator is the source character itself. The CV of hex escape sequence. Hex digit is the character whose code unit value is 16 times the MV of the first hex digit plus the MV of the second hex digit. The CV of Unicode escape sequence. U hex digit is the character whose code unit value is 4096 times the MV of the first hex digit plus 256 times the MV of the second hex digit plus 16 times the MV of the third hex digit plus the MV of the fourth hex digit. A conforming implementation when processing strict mode code. C1011 may not extend the syntax of escape sequence to include octal escape sequences described in B1.2. Note: a line terminator character cannot appear in a string literal, except as part of a line continuation to produce the empty character sequence. The correct way to cause a line terminator character to be part of the string value of a string literal is to use an escape sequence such as N or U000 8.5 regular expression literals. A regular expression literal is an input element that is converted to a regexp object. See 15.10 each time the literal is evaluated. Two regular expression literals in a program evaluate two regular expression objects that never compare as equals to each other even if the two literals' contents are identical. A regexp object may also be created at runtime by new regexp, C15104, or calling the regexp constructor as a function, 15103. The productions below describe the syntax for a regular expression literal and are used by the input element scanner to find the end of the regular expression literal. The strings of characters comprising the regular expression body and the regular expression flags are passed uninterpreted to the regular expression constructor, which interprets them according to its own, more stringent grammar. An implementation may extend the regular expression constructor's grammar, but it must not extend the regular expression body and regular expression flags productions or the productions used by these productions. Syntax: regular expression literal, regular expression body, regular expression flags. 4. ECMA International 2009 is the CV of the non-escape character. Regular expression body, regular expression first char, regular expression chars, regular expression chars. Empty, regular expression chars, regular expression char, regular expression first char, regular expression non-terminator but not or. Capital R, E, G, U, L, A, R, capital E, X, P, R, E, S, S, I, O, N, capital B, A, C, K, S, L, A, S, H, capital S, E, Q, U, regular expression class, regular expression char, regular expression non-terminator but not or, capital R, E, G, U, L, A, R, capital E, X, P, R, E, S, S, I, O, N, capital B, A, C, K, S, L, A, S, H, capital S, E, Q, U, regular expression class, capital R, E, G, U, L, A, R, capital E, X, P, R, E, S, S, I, O, N, capital B, A, C, K S L A S H capital S E Q U regular expression non-terminator, regular expression non-terminator, source character but not line terminator, regular exp Russian class, regular expression class chars, regular expression class chars, empty, regular expression class chars, regular expression class char, regular expression class char, regular expression non-terminator but not, or capital R E G U L A R capital E X P R E S S I O N capital B A C K S L A S H capital S E Q U regular expression flags. Empty. Regular expression flags identify a part. Note regular expression literals may not be empty. Instead of representing an empty regular expression literal, the characters start a single line comment. To specify an empty regular expression, use dart semantics. A regular expression literal evaluates to a value of the object type that is an instance of the standard built-in constructor EXP. This value is determined in two steps. First, the characters comprising the regular expression's regular expression body and regular expression flags production expansions are collected uninterpreted into two strings pattern and flags, respectively. Then each time the literal is evaluated, a new object is created as if by the expression new regexp, pattern, flags, where regexp is the standard built-in constructor with that name. The newly constructed object becomes the value of the regular expression literal. If the call to new regexp would generate an error as specified in 151041, the error must be treated as an early error. Clause 16.9 Automatic semicolon insertion. Certain ECMAScript statements, empty statement, variable statement, expression statement, do-while statement, continue statement, break statement, return statement, and throw statement must be terminated with semicolons. Such semicolons may always appear explicitly in the source text. For convenience, however, such semicolons may be omitted from the source text in certain situations. These situations are described by saying that semicolons are automatically inserted into the source code token stream in those situations. ECMA International 2009-25 7, 9. 1. Rules of automatic semicolon insertion. There are three basic rules of semicolon insertion. When, as the program is passed from left to right, a token, called the offending token, is encountered that is not allowed by any production of the grammar. Then a semicolon is automatically inserted before the offending token if one or more of the following conditions is true. The offending token is separated from the previous token by at least one line terminator. The offending token is when, as the program is passed from left to right, the end of the input stream of tokens is encountered and the parser is unable to parse the input token stream as a single complete ECMAScript program. Then a semicolon is automatically inserted at the end of the input stream when, as the program is passed from left to right, a token is encountered that is allowed by some production of the grammar. But the production is a restricted production and the token would be the first token for a terminal or non-terminal immediately following the annotation, noli, ne terminator here, within the restricted production, and therefore such a token is called a restricted token, and the restricted token is separated from the previous token by at least one line terminator. Then a semicolon is automatically inserted before the restricted token. However, there is an additional overriding condition on the preceding rules. A semicolon is never inserted automatically if the semicolon would then be passed as an empty statement or if that semicolon would become one of the two semicolons in the header of a for statement C1, 2, 6, 3. Note, the following are the only restricted productions in the grammar. Postfix expression, left-hand side expression, no line terminator here, plus left-hand side expression, no line terminator here. Continue statement, continue, no line terminator here, identify-rot. Break statement, break, no line terminator here, identify-rot. Return statement, return, no line terminator here, expression or throw statement, throw, no line terminator here, expression. The practical effect of these restricted productions is as follows. When a ++ or token is encountered where the parser would treat it as a postfix operator, and at least one line terminator occurred between the preceding token and the ++ or token, then a semicolon is automatically inserted before the ++ or token. When a continue, break, return, or throw token is encountered and a line terminator is encountered before the next token, a semicolon is automatically inserted after the continue, break, return, or throw token. The resulting practical advice to ECMAScript programmers is, a postfix ++ or operator should appear on the same line as its operand. An expression in a return or throw statement should start on the same line as the return or throw token. The identifier in a break or continue statement should be on the same line as the break or continue token. 6. Copyright sign. ECMA International 2009. 7. 9. 2 examples of automatic semicolon insertion. The source, 12. 3, is not a valid sentence in the ECMAScript grammar, even with the automatic semicolon insertion rules. In contrast, the source, 1, 2, 3, is also not a valid ECMAScript sentence, but is transformed by automatic semicolon insertion into the following, 1, 2, 3, which is a valid ECMAScript sentence. The source, 4, A, B, is not a valid ECMAScript sentence and is not altered by automatic semicolon insertion because the semicolon is needed for the header of a for statement. Automatic semicolon insertion never inserts one of the two semicolons in the header of a for statement. The source is transformed by automatic semicolon insertion into the following, return, a +b. Note the expression a +b is not treated as a value to be returned by the return statement, because a line terminator separates it from the token return. The source is transformed by automatic semicolon insertion into the following, a = b, ++c. Note the token ++ is not treated as a postfix oper at replying to the variable b, because a line terminator occurs between b and ++. The source, if a b else c = d, is not a valid ECMAScript sentence and is not altered by automatic semicolon insertion before the else token, even though no production of the grammar applies at that point, because an automatically inserted semicolon would then be passed as an empty statement. The source, a = b + c, d + e print, is not transformed by automatic semicolon insertion, because the parenthesized expression that begins the second line can be interpreted as an argument list for a function call, a = b + c, d + e print, return a +b, a = b ++ c. ECMA International 2009 27. In the circumstance that an assignment statement must begin with a left parenthesis, it is a good idea for the programmer to provide an explicit semicolon at the end of the preceding statement rather than to rely on automatic semicolon insertion. Types. Algorithms within this specification manipulate values each of which has an associated type. The possible value types are exactly those defined in this clause. Types are further subclassified into ECMAScript language types and specification types. An ECMAScript language type corresponds to values that are directly manipulated by an ECMAScript programmer using the ECMAScript language. The ECMAScript language types are undefined, null, boolean, string, number, and object. A specification type corresponds to meter values that are used within algorithms to describe the semantics of ECMAScript language constructs and ECMAScript language types. The specification types are reference, list, completion, property descriptor, property identifier, lexical environment, and environment record. Specification type values are specification artifacts that do not necessarily correspond to any specific entity within an ECMAScript implementation. Specification type values may be used to describe intermediate results of ECMAScript expression evaluation, but such values cannot be stored as properties of objects or values of ECMAScript language variables. Within this specification, the notation type X is used as shorthand for the type of X, where type refers to the ECMAScript language and specification types defined in this clause. Point 1. The undefined type. The undefined type has exactly one value, called undefined. Any variable that has not been assigned a value has the value undefined 8.2 the null type. The null type has exactly one value, called null 8.3 the Boolean type. The Boolean type represents a logical entity having two values, called true and false 8.4 the string type. The string type is the set of all finite ordered sequences of 0 or more 16-bit unsigned integer values. Elements. The string type is generally used to represent textual data in a running ECMAScript program, in which case each element in the string is treated as a code unit value. See clause 6. Each element is regarded as occupying a position within the sequence. These positions are indexed with non-negative integers. The first element, if any, is at position 0, the next element, if any, at position 1, and so on. The length of a string is the number of elements, that is, 16-bit values within it. The empty string has length 0 and therefore contains no elements. When a string contains actual textual data, each element is considered to be a single UTF-16 code unit. Whether or not this is the actual storage format of a string, the characters within a string are numbered by their initial code unit element position as though they were represented using UTF-16. All operations on strings except as otherwise stated treat them as sequences of undifferentiated 16-bit unsigned integers. They do not ensure the resulting string is in normalized form, nor do they ensure language-sensitive results. Note the rationale behind this design was to keep the implementation of strings as simple and high-performing as possible. The intent is that textual data coming into the execution environment from outside, for example, user input, text read from a file or received over the network, etc., be converted to Unicode normalized form. C before the running program. 8. Copyright sign, ECMA International 2009 sees it. Usually this would occur at the same time incoming text is converted from its original character encoding to Unicode, and would impose no additional overhead. Since it is recommended that ECMAScript source code be in normalized form. C. String literals are guaranteed to be normalized, if source text is guaranteed to be normalized, as long as they do not contain any Unicode escape sequences. 5. The number type. There are two other special values, called positive infinity and negative infinity. For brevity, these values are also referred to for expository purposes by the symbols plus and, respectively. Note that these two infinite number values are produced by the program expressions plus infinity, or simply infinity and infinity. Note that there is both a positive 0 and a negative 0. For brevity, these values are also referred to for expository purposes by the symbols plus 0 and 0, respectively. Note that these two different 0 number values are produced by the program expressions plus 0, or simply 0, and minus 0. SM2E, where S is plus 1 or 1, M is a positive integer less than 253 but not less than 252, and E is an integer ranging from 1074 to 971, inclusive. The remaining 9007199254740990, that is, 253 values are denormalized, having the form SM2E, where S is plus 1 or 1, M is a positive integer less than 252, and E is 1074. Note that all the positive and negative integers whose magnitude is no greater than 253 are representable in the number type. Indeed, the integer 0 has two representations, plus 0 and minus 0. A finite number has an odd significand if it is non-zero and the integer m used to express it, in one of the two forms shown above, is odd. Otherwise, it has an even significand. In this specification, the phrase the number value for x where x represents an exact non-zero real mathematical quantity which might even be an irrational number such as b, means a number value chosen in the following manner. Consider the set of all finite values of the number type, with 0 removed and with two additional values added to it that are not representable in the number type, namely 21,024, which is plus 1 times 253 2971, and 21,024, which is 1 times 253 2971. Choose the member of this set that is closest in value to x if two values of the set are equally close. Then the one with an even significand is chosen, for this purpose. The two extra values 21,024 and 21,024 are considered to have even significance. Finally, if 21,024 is chosen, replace it with plus. If 21,024 is chosen, replace it with. If plus 0 was chosen, replace it with 0 if and only if x is less than 0. Any other chosen value is used unchanged. The result is the number value for x. This procedure corresponds exactly to the behavior of the IEE 754 round to nearest mode. ECMA International 2009-29. Some ECMAScript operators deal only with integers in the range 231 through 231 inclusive, or in the range of 0 through 232 inclusive. These operators accept any value of the number type but first convert each such value to one of 232 integer values. See the
I'm waiting for Windows to eject a CD. I said preparing to eject, and now it's like just, well, I think it's done.
is either a named data property, a named accessor property, or an internal property. A named data property associates a name with an ECMAScript language value and a set of Boolean attributes. A named accessor property associates a name with one or two accessor functions and a set of Boolean attributes. The accessor functions are used to store or retrieve an ECMAScript language value that is associated with the property. An internal property has no name and is not.
I'm so tired of flash drives failing on me. Oh, I'm going to CDs.
Kinds of access for named.
The odds of a CD failing are 0%. I can't stand when I back stuff up and I plug in the flash drive and everything disappears. It's like, fuck. So, I don't know. My new technique for making backups. It's probably going to be just as bad. I bet a CD is going to fail at some point, and it's going to feel hopeless. I just want to make a solid backup. That's all I want. Hopefully, CDs are the answer. And I'm going to go to floppy drives if CDs fail me.
Value domain. Description. A named accessor property associates a name with the attributes listed in Table 6.0. Copyright sign. ECMA International 2009.
So I'm literally just finding the places where I use for as magic number and I'm replacing it with a new define. And I'm gonna just keep going or whatever. I had a bunch of managing other parts of the project to update and stuff. All that's done. I have a backup before I do all this new stuff. So if anything breaks, whatever, it's on a CD. So I'm solid that if I have to go back to a backup, I don't have to worry about checking the drive and oh crap, it's dead. Because it's a CD. So I don't know, yeah.
The property is.
I'm just gonna keep going. I have however many files left to do. And then when this is done, I gotta make more passes to the program.
Table 7. Default attribute values. Attribute name.
Until I get all the operations involved with the address arithmetic.
Find false. This.
And then when it's done, whatever, it's 64-bit.
Define the semantics of all.
And blah blah blah.
Properties are not part of the ECMAScript language. They are defined by the specification purely for expository purposes. An implementation of ECMAScript must behave as if it produced and operated upon internal properties in the manner described here. The names of internal properties are enclosed in double square brackets. When an algorithm uses an internal property of an object and the object does not implement the indicated internal property, a type error exception is thrown. The Table 8 summarizes the internal properties used by this specification that are applicable to all ECMAScript objects. The Table 9 summarizes the internal properties used by this specification that are only applicable to some ECMAScript objects. The descriptions in these tables indicates their behavior for native ECMAScript objects, unless stated otherwise in this document for particular kinds of native ECMAScript objects. Host objects may support these internal properties with any implementation-dependent behavior as long as it is consistent with the specific host object restrictions stated in this document. The value type domain columns of the following tables define the types of values associated with internal properties. The type names refer to the types defined in Clause 8 augmented by the following additional names. Any means the value may be any ECMAScript language type. Primitive means undefined, null, boolean, string, or number. Spec-op means the internal property is an internal method, an implementation-provided procedure defined by an abstract operation specification. Spec-op is followed by a list of descriptive, ECMA International 2009-31 parameter names. If a parameter name is the same as a type name, then the name describes the type of the parameter. If a spec-op returns a value, its parameter list is followed by the symbol and the type of the returned value. Internal property, prototype, extensible, get property, put, can put, has property, delete, default value, value type domain, object or null string, boolean, spec-op, property name, any, spec-op, property name, undefined or property descriptor, spec-op, property name, undefined or property descriptor, spec-op, property name, any, boolean, spec-op, property name, boolean, spec-op, property name, boolean, spec-op, property name, boolean, boolean, spec-op, hint, primitive spec-op, property name, property descriptor, boolean, boolean, description. The prototype of this object, a string value indicating a specification-defined classification of objects. If true, own properties may be added to the object. Returns the value of the named property. Returns the property descriptor of the named own property of this object, or undefined if absent. Returns the fully populated property descriptor of the named property of this object, or undefined if absent. Sets the specified named property to the value of the second parameter. The flag controls failure handling. Returns a Boolean value indicating whether returns a Boolean value indicating whether the object already has a property with the given name. Removes the specified named own property from the object. The flag controls failure handling. Hint is a string. Returns a default value for the object. Creates or alters the named own property to have the state described by a property descriptor. The flag controls failure handling. Table 8. Internal properties common to all objects. Every object, including host objects, must implement all of the internal properties listed in Table 8. However, the internal method may, for some objects, simply throw a type error exception. All objects have an internal property called. The value of this property is either null or an object and is used for implementing inheritance. Whether or not a native object can have a host object as it depends on the implementation. Every chain must have finite length, that is, starting from any object, recursively accessing the internal property must eventually lead to a null value. Named data properties of the object are inherited, are visible as properties of the child object, for the purposes of get access, but not for put access. Named accessor properties are inherited for both get access and put access. Every ECMAScript object has a Boolean valued internal property that controls whether or not named properties may be added to the object. If the value of the internal property is false, then additional named properties may not be added to the object. In addition, if is false, the value of the internal properties of the object may not be modified. Once the value of an internal property has been set to false, it may not be subsequently changed to true. Note this specification defines no ECMAScript language operators or built-in functions that permit a program to modify an object's or internal properties or to change the value of from false to true. 2. Copyright sign. ECMA International 2009. Implementation-specific extensions that modify or must not violate the invariants defined in the preceding paragraph. The value of the internal property is defined by the specification for every kind of built-in object. The value of the internal property of a host object may be any string value except one of arguments: array, boolean, date, error, function, JSON, math, number, object, regexp, and string. The value of an internal property is used internally to distinguish different kinds of objects. Note that this specificity does not provide any means for a program to access that value except through object prototype to string C15.2.4.2, unless otherwise specified. The common internal methods of native ECMAScript objects behave as described in 8.12. Array objects have a slightly different implementation of the internal method, C154551, and string objects have a slightly different implementation of the internal method, C155552. Arguments objects 10.6 have different implementations of, and function objects 15.3 have a different implementation of. Host objects may implement these internal methods in any manner unless specified otherwise. For example, one possibility is that for a particular host object indeed fetch and store property values but always generates false. However, if any specified manipulation of a host object's internal properties is not supported by an implementation, that manipulation must throw a type error exception when attempted. The internal method of a host object must conform to the following invariants for each property of the host object. If a property is described as a data property and it may return different values over time, then either or both of the and. If a property is described as a data property and it's and are both false, then the same value, according to 9.12, must be returned for the attribute of the property on all calls to. If the attributes other than may change over time or if the property might disappear, then the attribute must be true. If the attribute may change from false to true, then the attribute must be true. If the value of the host object's internal property has been observed by ECMAScript code to be false, then if a call to describes a property as non-existent, all subsequent calls must also describe that property as non-existent. The internal method of a host object must not permit the addition of a new property to a host object if the internal property of that host object has been observed by ECMAScript code to be false. If the internal property of that host object has been observed by ECMAScript code to be false, then it must not subsequently become true. ECMA International 2009-33. Internal property value type description domain. Primitive internal state information associated with this object. Of the standard built-in ECMAScript objects, only Boolean, date, number, and string objects implement. Table 9. Internal properties only defined for some objects. Spec op, a list of any object, creates an object, invoked via the new operator. The arguments to the spec op are the arguments passed to the new operator. Objects that implement this internal method are called constructors. Spec op, any, a list of any or reference, executes code associated with the object, invoked via a function call expression. The arguments to the spec op are this object and a list containing the arguments passed to the function call expression. Objects that implement this internal method are callable. Only callable objects that are host objects may return reference values. Spec op, any, Boolean, returns a Boolean value indicating whether the argument is likely an object that was constructed by this object. Of the standard built-in ECMAScript objects, only function objects implement. Lexical environment, a lexical environment that defines the environment in which a function object is executed. Of the standard built-in ECMAScript objects, only function objects implement. List of strings, a possibly empty list containing the identifier strings of a function's formal parameter list. Of the standard built-in ECMAScript objects, only function objects implement. ECMAScript code, the ECMAScript code of a function. Of the standard built-in ECMAScript objects, only function objects implement. Object, the target function of a function object created using the standard built-in function prototype bind method. Only ECMAScript objects created using function prototype bind have an internal property. Any, the pre-bound this value of a function object created using the standard built-in function prototype bind method. Only ECMAScript objects created using function prototype bind have an internal property. List of any, the pre-bound argument values of a function object created using the standard built-in function prototype bind method. Only ECMAScript objects created using function prototype bind have an internal property. Spec op, string, int x, match result, tests for a regular expression match and returns a match result value, C151021. Of the standard built-in ECMAScript objects, only regexp objects implement. Object, provides a mapping between the properties of an arguments object, C10.6, and the formal parameters of the associated function. Only ECMAScript objects that are arguments objects have an internal property. 8.7 The reference specification type. The reference type is used to explain the behavior of such operators as delete, type off, and the assignment operators. For example, the left-hand operand of an assignment is expected to produce a 4 copyright sign, ECMA International 2009 reference. The behavior of assignment could, instead, be explained entirely in terms of a case analysis on the syntactic form of the left-hand operand of an assignment operator, but for one difficulty, function calls are permitted to return references. This possibility is admitted purely for the sake of host objects. No built-in ECMAScript function defined by this specification returns a reference, and there is no provision for a user-defined function to return a reference. Another reason not to use a syntactic case analysis is that it would be lengthy and awkward, affecting many parts of the specification. A reference is a resolved name binding. A reference consists of three components: the base value, the reference name, and the Boolean valued strict reference flag. The base value is either undefined, an object, a Boolean, a string, a number, or an environment record, 1 0, 2, 1. A base value of undefined indicates that the reference could not be resolved to a binding. The reference name is a string. The following abstract operations are used in this specification to access the components of references. GetBase, v, returns the base value component of the reference v. GetReferenceName, v, returns the reference name component of the reference v. IsStrictReference, v, returns the strict reference component of the reference v. Has primitive base, v, returns true if the base value is a Boolean, string, or number. IsProperty reference, v, returns true if either the base value is an object or has primitive base, v, is true, otherwise returns false. IsUnresolvable reference, v, returns true if the base value is undefined and false otherwise. The following abstract operations are used in this specification to operate on references. 7.1 Get value, v. If type, v, is not reference, return v. Let base be the result of calling getBase, v. If is unresolvable reference, v. Throw a reference error exception. If is property reference, v. Then, if is primitive base, v, is false, then let get be the internal method defined below. B return the result of calling the get internal method using base as its this value, and passing get reference name, v, for the argument. Else, base must be an environment record. A return the result of calling the get binding value, C1 0, 2, 1. Concrete method of base passing get reference name, v, and is strict reference, v, as arguments. The following. Let O be to object, base. Let desk be the result of calling the internal method of O with property name p. If desk is undefined, return undefined. If is data descriptor, desk, is true, return desk. Otherwise, is access a descriptor, desk, must be true, so let getter be desk. If getter is undefined, return undefined. Return the result calling the internal method of getter providing base as the this value and providing no arguments. Note the object that may be created in step 1 is not accessible outside of the above method. An implementation might choose to avoid the actual creation of the object. The only situation where such an actual property access that uses this internal method can have visible effect is when it invokes an accessor function. 7.2 Put value, v, w. If type, v, is not reference, throw a reference error exception. ECMA International 2009 35. 2. Let base be the result of calling getBase, v. If is unresolvable reference, v. Then, if is strict reference, v, is true. Then, I throw reference error exception. Be call the. Else if is property reference, v. Then, if is primitive base, v, is false. Then let put be the special. Be call the put internal method using base as its this value, and passing get reference name, v, for the property name, w for the value, and is strict reference, v, for the throw flag. Else base must be a reference whose base is an environment record. So, a call the set mutable binding, 1 0, 2, 1. Concrete method of base, passing get reference name, v, w, and is strict reference, v, as arguments. Return the following. Let O be to object, base. If the result of calling the internal method of O with argument p is false, then, if throw is true, then throw a type error exception. B else return. Let ownDesk be the result of calling the internal method of O with argument p. If is data descriptor, ownDesk, is true, then, if throw is true, then throw a type error exception, b else return. Let desk be the result of calling the internal method of O with argument p. This may be either an own or inherited accessor property descriptor or an inherited data property descriptor. If is accessor descriptor, desk, is true, then a let setter be desk be call the internal method of setter providing bases to this value in an argument list containing only w, else. This is a request to create a known property on the transient object O. If throw is true, then throw a type error exception 8. Return. Note the object that may be created in step 1 is not accessible outside of the above method. An implementation might choose to avoid the actual creation of that transient object. The only situations where such an actual property assignment that uses this internal method can have visible effect are when it either invokes an accessor function or is in violation of a throw predicated error check. When throw is true, any property assignment that would create a new property on the transient object throws an error. Point 8. The list
What's going on, guys?
specification
It
type.
is late.
The list type is used to explain the evaluation of argument lists.
Alright, yes I can.
C1,
Alright, so we're gonna hit
2,
apply, we're gonna hit
4, in new expressions, in function calls, and in other algorithms where a simple list of values is needed. Values of the list type are simply ordered sequences of values. These sequences may be of any length. Point 9. The completion specification type. The completion type is used to explain the behavior of statements break, continue, return and throw that perform non-local transfers of control. Values of the completion type are triples of the form type, value, target, where type is one of normal, break, continue, return, or throw. Value is any ECMAScript language value or empty, and target is any ECMAScript identifier or empty. The term abrupt completion refers to any completion with a type other than normal. 6. Copyright sign. ECMA International 2009. 8.10. The property descriptor and property identifier specification types. The property descriptor type is used to explain the manipulation and reification of named property attributes. Values of the property descriptor type are records composed of named fields where each field's name is an attribute name and its value is a corresponding attribute value as specified in 8.6.1. In addition, any field may be present or absent. Property descriptor values may be further classified as data property descriptors and accessor property descriptors based upon the existence or use of certain fields. A data property descriptor is one that includes any fields named either raw. An accessor property descriptor is one that includes any fields named either. Any property descriptor may have fields named and a property descriptor value may not be both a data property descriptor and an accessor property descriptor. However, it may be neither. A generic property descriptor is a property descriptor value that is neither a data property descriptor nor an accessor property descriptor. A fully populated property descriptor is one that is either an accessor property descriptor or a data property descriptor and that has all of the fields that correspond to the property attributes defined in either 8.6.1 Table 5 or Table 6. For notational convenience within this specification, an object literal-like syntax can be used to define a property descriptor value. For example, property descriptor 42, false, true, defines a data property descriptor. Field name order is not significant. Any fields that are not explicitly listed are considered to be absent. In specification text and algorithms, dot notation may be used to refer to a specific field of a property descriptor. For example, if D is a property descriptor, then D is shorthand for the field of D named. The property identifier type is used to associate a property name with a property descriptor. Values of the property identifier type are...
I dropped the bitrate to like 500 kilobytes per second because this streaming software is shit and YouTube is shit. I do not understand how this software can be so incompetent. I just want to click a button and then be on with whatever I'm doing. I don't have time to sit here and look at, is the stream running? Is it crashing? Is the bitrate stable? What's the software doing? Is there congestion in the network? What's happening? I'm just trying to do my thing. And this fucking software can't do its thing because it's shit. So I don't know. I dropped the bitrate to 500 kilobytes per second. And it makes no sense.
The abstract operation is generic descriptor is called.
YouTube says,
Following steps are taken. If desk is undefined, then return false. If is accessor descriptor, desk, and is data descriptor, desk, are both false, then return true, return false. ECMA International 2009-37, 8, 4 from property descriptor, desk, when the abstract operation from property descriptor is called with property descriptor desk. The following steps are taken. The following algorithm assumes that desk is a fully populated property descriptor, such as that returned from C.
YouTube says it's like 4 minutes behind real time. It says YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. As such, viewers will experience buffering. Why is it buffering if it's not receiving enough video? That makes no sense.
Desk must be true. So, I call the internal method of obj with arguments get, property descriptor, desk, true, 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 and false. B call the internal method of obj with let str be the result of calling the internal method of toString, with O as this value in an empty argument list. B if str is a primitive value, return str. Throw a type error exception. When the internal method of O is called with no hint, then it behaves as if the hint were number, unless O is a date object, C1596, in which case it behaves as if the hint was string. The above specification of for native objects can return only primitive values. If a host object implements its own internal method, it must ensure that its internal method can return only primitive values. 12.9 p desk throw. In the following algorithm, the term reject means if throw is true, then throw a type error exception, otherwise return false. The algorithm contains steps that test various fields of the property descriptor desk for specific values. The fields that are tested in this manner need not actually exist in desk. If a field is absent, then its value is considered to be false. When the internal method of O is called with property name P, property descriptor desk, and boolean flag throw, the following steps are taken. Let current be the result of calling the internal method of O with property name P. Let extensible be the value of the internal property of O. If current is undefined and extensible is false, then reject. If current is undefined and extensible is true, then if is generic descriptor, desk, or as data descriptor, desk, is true. Then I create a known data property named P of object O whose enumerable and able attribute values are described by desk. If the value of an attribute field of desk is absent, the attribute of the newly created property is set to its default value. ECMA International 2009-41. B else. Desk must be an accessor property descriptor, so I create an own accessor property named P of object O whose enumerable and attribute values are described by desk. If the value of an attribute field of desk is absent, the attribute of the newly created property is set to its default value. See return true. Return true if every field in desk is absent. Return true if every field in desk also occurs in current and the value of every field in desk is the same value as the corresponding field in current when compared using the same value algorithm. 9.12. If the field of current is false, then A reject. If the field of desk is true, B reject. If the field of desk is present and the fields of current and desk are the Boolean negation of each other. If is generic descriptor, desk, is true, then no further validation is required. Else, if is data descriptor, current, and is data descriptor, desk, have different results, then A reject. If the field of current is false, B if is data descriptor, current, is true, then I convert the property named P of object O from a data property to an accessor property. Preserve the existing values of the converted properties and attributes and set the rest of the properties' attributes to their default values. See else. I convert the property named P of object O from an accessor property to a data property. Preserve the existing values of the converted properties and enumerable attributes and set the rest of the properties' attributes to their default values. 10. Else. If is data descriptor, current, and is data descriptor, desk, are both true, then if the field of current is false, then I reject. If the field of current is false and the field of desk is true. 2. If the field of current is false, Then, reject. If the field of desk is present in same value, desk current is false, b else. The field of current is true, so any change is acceptable. 1. Else. Is access a descriptor, current, and is access a descriptor, desk, are both true, so A. If the field of current is false, then I reject. If the current 2. Reject. If the current 2. For each attribute field of desk that is present, set the correspondingly named attribute of the property named P of object O to the value of the field. 3. Return true. However, if O is an array object, it has a more elaborate internal method defined in 5, 4, 5, 1. Note step 10b allows any field of desk to be different from the corresponding field of current if current's field is true. This even permits changing the of a property whose attribute is false. This is allowed because a true attribute would permit an equivalent sequence of calls where is first set to true, a new is set, and then is set to false. Type conversion and testing. The ECMAScript runtime system performs automatic type conversion as needed. To clarify the semantics of certain constructs, it is useful to define a set of conversion abstract operations. These abstract operations are not a part of the language. They are defined here to aid the specification of the semantics of the language. The conversion abstract operations are polymorphic, that is, they can accept a value of any ECMAScript language type, but not of specification types. 2. Copyright sign. ECMA International 2009 9.1 to primitive. The abstract operation to primitive takes an input argument and an optional argument preferred type. The abstract operation to primitive converts its input argument to a non-object type. If an object is capable of converting to more than one primitive type, it may use the optional hint preferred type to favor that type. Conversion occurs according to Table 10. Input type, undefined null Boolean number string, point 2 to Boolean, Table 10. To primitive conversions. Result. The result equals the input argument no conversion. The result equals the input argument no conversion. The result equals the input argument no conversion. The result equals the input argument no conversion.